share this story because I want people to realize how quickly your life can change, because we really do overestimate it. We think it's going to take 3, 4, 5, 10 years to change our lives, but really can happen very, very quickly when you are starting to be intentional.
That's Danielle Canty, the co-founder and president of bossbabe. And this is Make Yourself at Home, the podcast that takes you into the homes of people you admire to show you a side you don't usually get to see. I'm Kristen Twyford, and every week we'll talk to someone at the top of their career to explore holistic success and how work and home are inextricably intertwined. Along the way, we hope to inspire you to live well, whatever that means to you. Make Yourself at Home is presented by Nines, the household management app designed to help you manage your home and everything that comes with it, so you can live with ease. Today, we're in Danielle Canty's home in Los Angeles, where she runs bossbabe and hosts the bossbabe podcast with her co-founder, Natalie Ellis. Together, they've built one of the largest communities of ambitious women and female entrepreneurs in the world. But just a few years ago, Danielle had a completely different life. She lived in the UK where she grew up. She was married to her college boyfriend, and she had achieved, by many people's definition, professional success as a chiropractor and an owner of her practice. Then a skiing accident gave her a wake-up call and set off a domino effect that changed everything. In this conversation, we're talking about the life Danielle felt like she was supposed to build, and how, after turning an idea into a multi-million-dollar company, moving halfway around the world, navigating a tough divorce, and rewiring how she thinks about time and success, she's starting to build a life she loves. Make Yourself at Home with Danielle Canty. Danielle, thank you so much for being on Make Yourself at Home. Tell us a little bit about where you're sitting and a little bit about your home.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really, really excited. So I'm living in LA, and today I'm sat in my dining kitchen area. And there's two beautiful, which you can't see actually, two beautiful glass doors right beside me. And I'm one of those people that obsesses when they're looking for a new space about having an office, but then always finding reasons not to necessarily always work in there.
Yep.
So I like to mix up the environment at times. And this is one of my favorite spaces because it's so light and airy and the big windows. So yeah, It's one of my faves.
What does your home mean to you? Is it your place to recharge? Is it, the place where you're most productive? What does home mean to you?
Oh my goodness. I feel like my home to me is the foundation. I always feel like, people say sometimes that your home environment is, if it's messy, that's a reflection of your mind. And being a businesswoman, I actually really relate to that. I find it very hard to work in chaos. And so my home is the foundation of everything that I am then on top of it. So I take great pride in what my home looks like and keeping it clean and tidy. And it's kind of like a refuge to me, and also such a key pillar in my life. I love traveling, but for me, there's nothing like being at home. It's like a sanctuary. I feel safe here. And, energy of a home is actually really, really important for me. And notoriously, whenever I'm looking to move, it takes me so long because I'm very, very particular in where I'll live.
Have you seen that play out in your own life, that it really has had an impact on your mindset and your productivity and your happiness?
Oh my goodness, 100%. So there's a couple of examples. When I lived in the UK, I was always wanting to be with a view. For me, my homes with a view are really, really important because it's really expansive and it's really symbolized where I've been at in my life. And particularly, I've always seen that kind of relay over into business. And then when I moved to LA, I found this beautiful spot when I initially moved, a really, really light, airy apartment. But like I said, my home is so important to me. I actually got mold poisoning in that. And that really affected how I was able to think and all of these aspects. And I definitely noticed a lot of shifts. And again, now in this place, I've had feng shui design, and there's been aspects of that which have then really kind of tied to what's happening in my life as well, depending on what's been happening in those rooms, or the other way around, like what's been happening in my career and then what's been happening in that room, or my love and creativity and what's been happening in that room. So yeah, I think there's a huge, huge tie to the relationship for me personally and how my home is behaving and feels, and then also what's going on in my personal and professional life.
Well, on this show, we love to sort of explore that question and the relationship between home and your home life and your overall success. And what I think is really cool about Boss Babe is you really look at the whole picture. So when you and Natalie Ellis created Boss Babe, you really wanted to build something for this unapologetically ambitious woman. And I love that on your homepage, I'm going to read straight from it. It says, "We exist to help ambitious women make more money and build the lives that they love." Build lives they love. I think that's such an interesting way of putting it, because this is not just about entrepreneurship, it's about your whole life. And I know that that is really meaningful to you personally. So take me back to the very beginning. Before Boss Babe, you're a chiropractor, you had success, by most people's definition. And then you had this sort of aha moment that this is not the life that you wanted to have. What happened, and what did success look like to you back then?
I love that. It's such a powerful question. So build a life that you love. So for me, but I also know this story kind of translates to a lot of people. We build a life not necessarily that we love, but we think we're supposed to build. We've watched the TV shows, we've watched the movies, we've had the books read to us as little girls, like whatever that story has been. And it's never been like, oh, what do I truly want for my life? But, oh, what am I supposed to do in this life? And for me, that was a story that I very much embodied. So at 18, I went to chiropractic school because I wanted to help people. And, that has actually been something that's been threaded through everything. Every choice that I've done in business now has always been like, how can I help and support other people? So that is a core belief of mine. But I went to chiropractic school because, that was what was around me. My dad went to a chiropractor. I didn't know what I wanted to be. Asking 16, 18-year-olds what they wanted to be when they grow up. Like, they don't know. You don't know the meaning of life is, or even what you enjoy at that point. So I went to chiropractic school and had a really successful chiropractic career. I owned businesses in the UK, and I was part of the fastest growing primary healthcare brand in the UK as well. But in 2016, my dad had this really bad skiing accident. We were on a trip and, we were a little bit competitive, and he was going down a run. I was just behind him, and he clocked 68.9 miles an hour when he hit a lump of snow, went up in the air and landed on his pelvis and actually fractured it all the way up. And during that point, so, there was helicopters, there was operations. He wasn't able to set up for 3 months. He was told he wasn't sure if he was ever going to be able to ski again. And it was a really hard time. And when we were in the hospital and having to plan what was going to happen next, I had 4 days there, and then that was the end of my vacation, and I had to go home. And what I realized is like, wow, I might have a feeling of financial freedom at this point, but I actually don't have true freedom because I'm tied to this brick and mortar business, or I'm tied to the life that I created in a way that I didn't really want to be anymore. And that made me question, what was the life that I had built? Did I still want that? And really had me looking into what really lit me up, what were my core values, what really mattered to me in this world, not what mattered to other people, what I thought as a 20, I think I was like 28 at this time, 26, 27. What did I like at that point in my life? I let go of all of that and really started to kind of lean into, well, if I was to have all the choices in the world, what is the life that I want to create? And so then that sent me on a path into the online business, where I eventually met my business partner and co-founder, Natalie Ellis, in 2018. And then we built Boss Babe from there, and we built it from a place of, hang on a minute, we want something, we crave something. And so if we're also wanting this, surely we're not the only women that feel lonely as business owners. Surely we're not the only women who feel like it's kind of hard to find a space where you can be unapologetically ambitious. Surely we're not the only women out there who are also questioning, okay, is this the career path that I do truly want to be on? Or actually now, as I'm heading into my late the late 20s that I was at that point, but women, this happens all ages, into their 40s, 50s. And like, what is that career path that I now want to go down? And so I started to change that and really decided that, you know what, I wanted to build an online business. I wanted to help more women than I was. At that point, I was just helping people one-to-one. That wasn't enough for me. And so very slowly but surely, I started changing. I didn't leave chiropractic and give it all up. I just started learning new skill sets at that time and leaning into those and building from there. So it was a really exciting time, but also a very scary time as well.
I can imagine. What was going through your head? You know, you're starting over. You're changing your life completely. Tell me about that fear and what you were feeling.
This is actually something in my personality. I think some people are very much, they'll risk everything. They'll just like cut the ties and move completely. I've definitely always been someone who likes risk, but looks at ways I can mitigate risks. So I actually started Boss Babe moonlighting. So I would do it after work. I would do it on weekends. And then I would go on vacation for my chiropractic business, but I would actually be flying to LA to speak or meet with my co-founder and do strategy sessions and all of these things. So it was actually not just something where one day I was like, I'm going to, delete everything that I've done previously. It was like, okay, well, I have this life that I love, but I feel like it could be better. And I want to explore that. And I just started slowly doing these aspects. And that actually made the fear much more manageable to deal with, because it wasn't like I was turning my back on anything, finally, and just like giving everything up. I was actually learning alongside what I was already doing. And I was seeing where I could transfer skill sets. This is one of the things that I see a lot with women who and I just speak to the female demographic just because it's really close to me, and I work a lot predominantly with females, but I know this is going to happen for everybody. And what I started to feel was, hang on a minute, I can't possibly, I'm not good at selling online. I'm not good at doing this online, but I realized how many transferable skills I actually have from chiropractic. That yes, that might be taking care of someone's pain, but really understanding how to extract pain points from them, how to have empathy, and how to help them on a journey that gets them from A to Z. It was actually already in my skill set. I just needed to turn it into something that was slightly different. And I just encourage anyone who's on this career change, you have so many transferable skill sets that you don't even realize. And that's like the crazy, wonderful thing that if you think about this is what's crazy. In 2017, I didn't even have an Instagram account. I started an account in 2017 on Instagram. And then 2018, I was founder of an online business. And it's just like one of those things that you can always look for reasons why you can't do things, but the reasons that you need to look for are the reasons why you can. And even if you just have one thing, but that one reason is so, so powerful against the 10 reasons why you probably couldn't do it. That one reason will help you change and learn the skill sets that help those other 9 things turn into 10 things that reasons of, again, why you can.
Mm-hmm. And in less than 2 years, you and Natalie turned Boss Babe from really an idea into a multi-million-dollar company. How did that change every aspect of your life, even outside of your career, just everything else? I can imagine it must have been a whirlwind personally.
I don't even know where to start with that. Yeah, it was a huge whirlwind. I mean, I was living in the UK at this point. Natalie was in the US, my co-founder, and so we set up a C Corp because I know I wasn't a US resident, so couldn't have anything else. So we set up a C Corp and started growing that business across an 8-hour time zone. So that first of all shifted my life. Like, used to do a lot of work into evenings, etc. And that was really steady. And then I think outside of that, I'd been to the US once. So there was all these like learning aspects, even cultural changes and legal changes, all these things I was like learning. And then that was 2018. We founded the company, like January, February 2018. I'm just trying to think when I decided to move. June 2019 was when I decided to move and apply for my visa. And then I moved in February 2020. So when you're saying how has Boss Babe changed my life, it's changed my life in a physical and a mental capacity. Physically, I moved from the UK to the US and built a home and built friendships here. And mentally, it really allowed me to see that I was completely in control of my own destiny. Like if I put my mind to anything, it didn't matter how many no's I had or how many times I had failed. If I saw every failure as a learning, then I could change that. I could understand. And if I, I'm not saying the journey on building Boss Babe into what it is today, which is a multi-million-dollar company with a social media following, an email list, a blog, a podcast, all of these things. It was just not one thing that changed that. It was a snowball effect, but the snowball effect where we just kept trying, like we weren't taking no for an answer. And, there wasn't anything, failure wasn't a word that we even had. We were just like, oh, that didn't work, let's try again. And so I think it also taught me resilience. And then in addition to that, building a company in the US, even culture is so different in the US to the UK. My life in LA, California, I remember used to look at, shows and movies in the UK. I'm like, oh, these movie stars aren't actually real people. They're just like, it seemed so far from the world that I grew up in and that I was. And so there's been a ton of learnings, really. I feel like my life is so different and my attitude's really different. I'm always like, what can I learn from this situation? What can I learn from this person? Which I also think is really, really powerful. And you have to have that as a foundation whenever you're building a business.
Yep. And you had set a very clear goal for yourself and what you wanted out of your career and your life, right? So take me back to setting that goal and then how it felt when you achieved that within the first couple of years of Boss Babe.
So goal setting is something I've actually always done, and I do it in two forms. It's like, okay, what are my tangible goals, but also what are feelings and experiences that I want to have? And I'll just say, like, this was not a world that I was familiar with before probably 2016, 17. So prior to that, I was like, I'm like going to get this grade in school. I'm going to do this, that. And, I knew I wanted a first in my degree, and I set that goal for myself and went on to achieve that. But when I left that, and I knew I wanted to own a business, so it was all very, very tangible. But I think I had lost like the feelings of goals. Like, okay, a goal for a goal's sake really is never going to make you happy. You can say, I want to have this amount of money in the bank account. I want to own this house, but why? Like, what is actually attached to that? And in 2016, when I started looking at, okay, what is my career? How is my career going to unfold, and what direction do I want to take it in? I started really reading like personal development books. I read like the Big Leap by Guy Hendricks. I read Secret Mind of a Millionaire. I really understood like how you could think about money too, and just went on this exploration around opening my mind to possibility and opening my mind to the fact that it was malleable. I didn't have to always think around it. Was, that's the beauty of the brain and neuroplasticity. You can change your thoughts, your patterns, and your behaviors, and therefore your habits. So I started going on this mission to be like, okay, how can I grow my brain, like personally and professionally? How can I learn more? And as I went on that journey, I really discovered that goals were so much more than the tangible side to it. There was feelings, and I just started journaling like how I wanted to feel every day, how I wanted to wake up, how I wanted to have community and friendships and relationships and these aspects. And that's where it really started blossoming from. But what I will say at the heart of every single goal or journey that I've been on has always been my home. And my mom and dad will say this too. I've always been very obsessed with having a nice house and a home because I love having people around. I love entertaining. I love curating a space that I feel settled in on a daily basis and that people love. Like when they come, I actually do my podcast from my home. And whenever people come, they're like, oh my God, the energy in here is so nice. And that's the type of thing that I really always want to create. And that was the journey that I went on. So when I think about achieving my goals and how I feel when I achieve them, it's that confidence, because I think competence breeds confidence. So when you set a goal for yourself, you achieve it, you have that feeling of, oh my goodness, I did this. I said I was going to do it and I did it. And that can be these huge goals, or it can be these little goals sometimes. Just like, I'm glad I went to the gym 3 times last week. I said I was going to. Or I'm really glad that I journaled and read every single morning this week. I said I was going to, and I'm really proud that I did go on and achieve that thing. And so for me, it's less about actually the big achievements and the goals, but it's more like it's the satisfaction and the competence and the confidence that I gain when I say I'm going to do something, I do it and I achieve it. Like that then breeds the momentum for the next goal to come.
Absolutely. And part of your goal was financial, right? You kind of had this lifestyle that you wanted to live. Tell me a little bit about that.
Okay, this is a fun story. So when I was in the UK, around that 2017, I was probably earning around, I really need to find out and check, but maybe $100,000 at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a huge amount of money to me. Like I was out earning my parents. Like I was like, compared to the lives of people that I now see and am around living in LA, it was nothing. But to me, that was a huge amount. And to most people, that is a huge amount of money that you are earning every single year. And I was feeling really accomplished with that. And I was also feeling, well, hang on a minute. Like if I'm doing this now, because one of my main goals is always growth. If I'm doing this now in my 20s, what else could I do? But I was starting to feel like the ceiling was clamping down on me a little bit because I was trading time for money a lot of the time. And that's why when my dad had the accident, I was realizing that if I wasn't in work, I wasn't really able to maximize my earning potential. And so during that journey where I was like, okay, right, this is exactly what I'm earning right now. I had a mentor at the time. Actually, it wasn't even a formal mentor. Basically, my friend put me in contact with this guy, and he was like a multimillionaire, and he jumped on a call with me as a favor. And he was like, okay, so how much do you want to earn? And I was like, I don't know now. Like I've kind of, if you told me 4 years, 5 years previous to that, I would have been earning 100,000. I'm like, oh my God, sweet, amazing.
Right.
So I was like, I don't know. And he was like, well, pick a number. What feels scary? And I was like, 200,000? Like I had no idea how I would ever make $200,000 in a year. And then he was like, that's not really a very big jump from where you're at. And I was like, well, it feels that. And he was like, no, let's double it. $400,000 a year you want to earn. I was like, huh? Like, no, like I just like the whole concept of that was absolutely alien and felt so intimidating and so overwhelming. Like this was a pipe dream. This was like never ever in a million years going to be achievable. So anyway, he's like, no, 400,000. So this was in the July, August of 2017. I was a chiropractor. Like I said, my dad had the accident in the February the previous year. And I decided that I was going to try and explore this online world. I hired a coach, which was $10,000 for the year, which felt like so much money at the time. And as part of this, I could go to meet her in San Diego at a Brendan Burchard event. And so I took vacation time off my chiropractic job. So they thought I was going on vacation. I went to San Diego to attend Brendan's High Performance Academy. And there I actually met Natalie. She was in the States at the time. I met her. That was September 2017. And by January, February 2018, we'd incorporated Boss Babe. And in our first year, we made like 1.4 million. And so my takings home from that were around 400,000. And I share this story because I want people to realize how quickly your life can change, because we really do overestimate it. We think it's going to take 3, 4, 5, 10 years to change our lives, but really can happen very, very quickly when you're starting to be intentional. And I always call it like putting a new lens over. When you set these goals, when you set these ambitions, you kind of put a lens over your eyes, like putting glasses on. Like you were wearing blue tinted glasses and now you put some pink tinted glasses on and you can see things differently. And it's not that it changes what's happening around you. It's just that you notice things you look at things in a different way. You appreciate different things about them. And so I think what happened was, because he asked me that, I really realized that chiropractic was not where I could, treating patients day to day and building brick and mortar businesses, which takes so much upfront capital to get off the ground. I wasn't in a position to do that. And I was seeing the block of where I got to. It was going to be so much harder for me to get to that next stage. Whereas when he asked me this, I was like, okay, well, if I want to be earning 400,000, how am I going to do that? And I was like, wow, I need to be like opening up what I'm teaching, what I'm doing. And it allowed me to start seeing opportunity where I don't think I would have seen it if he hadn't have asked me that question before. Now, I will also share, when I told him that I was going to become a business partner with someone I just met, he was like, you are absolutely crazy. Don't do it. You don't know this woman and all of these things. But there was just this gut instinct, that woman's intuition of like, you know what? There is something telling me that I should 100% do this. And thank goodness I did. And I also think that's another lesson. Like, it's trusting your gut. I do think as humans, often we're blessed with this intuition that sometimes we turn off. We call it that gut instinct, but how often do you ignore the gut instinct versus actually being like, I don't need to explain it. It's just there. It's positive in this way, or I have this gut instinct about someone over here, whatever that is. I really would encourage everybody listening to this to always listen to that, because, I've had Jamie, a dear friend of mine, Jamie Kern-Lima, on the Boss Babe podcast. She founded It Cosmetics and sold to L'Oreal for like 1.2 billion or something. And she shared with me on the podcast, it was the same thing for her. No. But she had this gut instinct that it absolutely was going to be a yes. And she should pursue this idea that she had, even though everyone else around her was telling her it was crazy. And whenever, I think one thing that's really important, which I actually always curate in my space, in my home, is a place where I can be still. A place where I can just sit and think and lean into what is my intuition telling me, what is my gut telling me about this next step that I get to go on, or about that decision that I get to make. And sometimes I can't quite explain why it's a yes or why it's a no. It just is. And so what does that really look like? So that's also another thing that's been really important in my home.
That is amazing. So you have this vision. You start to really follow your gut and follow your just intention. And then you've already turned Boss Babe into what you imagined it to be and more. So you've really made it. You've achieved this huge goal, that 400K goal you achieved in your first year, which is just amazing. And then things start to kind of change in your personal life. So I know that you've been very open about your divorce and sort of what that moment meant to you in your life. Can you share a little bit about that time and what kind of made you realize that something was off?
Yeah, so I speak to this because what I realized when I was going through my divorce is it was really hard to find people who were a similar age to me going through this, and it felt really lonely. And so basically I met my partner when I was 18. So I met him at chiropractic college too. And, my parents have been together married 40 years. They just celebrated. And they met when they were 17 and 18 too. So I think in my naivety, how we were saying right at the beginning of this conversation, what is around you really influences what you see as examples, influences where you're at. And so I saw examples of people living a certain life, which was, a proper job, I'll put in quotation marks, of being a chiropractor or being a lawyer or being a doctor or being an accountant or something like that. My mom was a teacher, these like very tangible careers. And so I thought that's what I should do. And the same was with my marriage. My parents met at 18. Oh, I should definitely, this is my boyfriend, like I'm going to marry him now. And, we were together for 14 years, and we got married after 9 years. And we had how would I describe it? I wouldn't say an amazing relationship. It just was a good relationship. We were both good communicators. We were both, respected each other, and it was just an okay relationship. It wasn't toxic. There wasn't anything like that in it. It was just flat. It was kind of just like one of those relationships really that you're in and you're really not meant to be together. It's like, okay, and you can be friends, but it's not your heart, soul desire. And I realized that as we were growing and I was going through this huge change, like when we met, we were both similar backgrounds, wanted to be chiropractors, and my life just started going a whole different trajectory, like building an online business, building a following, starting a podcast, speaking on these stages. And it just became really, really difficult for us to navigate, because I think that what happens is when one of you really is wanting to grow in one direction and the other isn't, it just becomes this really hard separation where either one of you is dragging the other one along with you, or the other one is diminishing their dreams for that other one in the relationship. And we didn't have kids at the time. And so after like good couple of years where I'm really trying to make this work, therapy, doing all of these things, we just decided that, you know what, I don't think we're meant to be together past this season. And this is my other really key belief, is I believe that people come into your life for seasons. I believe that homes are in your life for seasons. I believe that friendships and relationships are in your life for seasons, and seasons change, and that's okay. It's not a good thing. It's not a bad thing. It wasn't like a bad thing that my marriage or my relationship ended to me. I felt like it was a transition. It was a very, very important thing in my life to help the growth of where I was at. And ultimately, it wasn't going to help where I needed to go in that next phase of my journey, and it wasn't going to help him. And, again, I think, no one gets married to get divorced. No one gets married with that intention. But what's also important is, like, why are you staying in a marriage that is ultimately making both of you really, really unhappy, particularly when for us there was no children involved. And so it just became a really important and really huge decision to leave, but also the best decision for both of us. Like, I know that both of us are so much happier now. And I think through the separation too, it was like really interesting in like the energetics of our home, and it just starting to not feel like a home at all. And that's why I became really, really conscious of actually what my home surroundings were like, because I could see them mirrored in my personal relationships, or my friendships, or my businesses, etc. But it was really, really difficult. But now, like, I truly feel like we've both gone in our separate ways, and we're both building new lives, but from the foundation that we're already at. And it's really powerful, really hard. It's not going through a divorce was the hardest thing I've ever had to do, for sure. Not easy.
I can imagine. And especially in a business that is such a lifestyle business, and you're putting on a smile every day on Instagram and on your podcast, and your brand is uplifting. That's the whole idea. How did you keep your balance when you're going through such a tough time in your personal life, and then trying to turn it on when you're in your business role?
Yeah, it was hard. So essentially we separated in the January, and I didn't announce it until the June, which was really just like really hard, because I have a very authentic brand. Like, people who follow me on my Instagram account, they know they just know me. There isn't really anything that I keep back, and I share a lot. And this was actually just a part of me that I wasn't ready to share. And also because someone else was involved and he wasn't on social media. And so I also felt like there was this respect that I wanted to make sure was there, versus just like telling everybody when neither of us were ready for that. But it was really, really challenging. And there were for sure moments, because, record a podcast, been recording the podcast since April 2019. There were times where, I would be on calls with lawyers going through this divorce process. And there was this one time I remember Natalie was over, we were recording 4 podcasts in person this one day. And my lawyers were in the UK, because we're getting divorced from the UK. And so my legal calls were always like 7, 8 a.m. And I had this legal call, and I was so upset after. I was like sobbing in my closet. And Natalie like came and knocked on the door, and she's like, "We've got the podcast in 30 minutes. I was like, "I'm not ready yet."
Oh.
She sobbed some more. Then she came in at 15 minutes too. She's like, "You got to come out now." And I was like, "I know." And just went on, sorted my powder out, put some makeup on, and just went out there and had to pretend like nothing was wrong, and just put this mask down. And that was really hard, because there becomes this inauthenticity with yourself, but you also know that you have to show up in a certain way. And I think a lot of us can relate to it, particularly as women too. Like, when you have to, I've had, heard stories about women like having miscarriages, etc., and not being able to share with anybody because they weren't ready to share that they were pregnant, and then having to go through this and put on a brave face on at work. And I think it's something that, is really hard to go through in our lives, but is also one of the things that sometimes you you do just have to do it. It's just life. It's circumstances. You have to put the brave face on. You have to put your big girl pants on, go out there, do your thing, and then come back and have that sanctuary, have that home, have those relationships that just nurture you through and help you through to the other side. And that was the one thing I was really, really grateful for, was how much my friends supported me. Like, they were such a pillar for me to get through that. And I think if you speak to anyone who goes through a divorce, it's like the hardest thing. And the way I would describe it is like a rain cloud. I'd like describe, like, even on your sunny days, you have this rain cloud in the distance. It's just there lingering, and you're just having to like divide houses and assets and, you know, do it in a way that, you know, is as amicable as possible. But I don't know, it's never really an amicable journey, I think.
Yeah, it's
but
never
just
easy.
really never easy, but just really going through that. But that's the thing. I think your home sees so many, those four walls see a lot. They really do.
Absolutely. And since then, you've been really open about this with your audience at Boss Babe. And, you know, I think it's so interesting how home and life have come together, or home and work have come together in a way that is just sort of unprecedented after the pandemic. You know, it's all related. Everybody's talking about bringing their most authentic self to work. And you really have done that with Boss Babe since the beginning. But then after this moment, you know, you chose to be very open about your divorce and share this with people. What kind of feedback have you gotten from other women who have been trying to put on that brave face? What have you heard from them?
Oh my goodness. Like, this has been why I have shared about it. I was lonely. So what I try and do in my career, and what I've always done, is I've like noticed how I'm feeling. And, you know, when I started Boss Babe, was because there wasn't a community for ambitious women. And I remember a boss saying to me, like, oh, I'm really worried about your ambition, Danielle. I don't want you to get hurt when you don't achieve it. Like, I was like, wait, who says that? Like, would you have said that if I was a man? Like, this makes no sense to me whatsoever. And the same thing I felt, so we started Boss Babe, that community, and we have a female membership called the Society, where female entrepreneurs connect, build, and grow. And so when I was going out through my divorce, I was like, hey, where can I learn from? Which podcast can I listen to? And most things I was listening to are women much older than me, more in their 40s at that time. Like I said, I think I was in my 30s. Just turned 30 or something. And I was going through this, and I felt so lonely and isolated around women my age, just not sharing this information. And I knew of one other person that had gotten divorced around my age, and I immediately called her. I was like, hey, I need to talk to someone my age. This is what I'm going through. And so I really pledged that I wouldn't be shamed into silence around this. Like, there was a lot of people like, oh my God, like, you were divorced? And I was like, yeah, like, I have got a divorce. You know what? Things don't work out sometimes. That is life, and I'm okay with that. And I've made peace with that too. And so that was really important for me then to share that story around, like, there's nothing to be ashamed of if you have a relationship that doesn't work out and you have to go your separate ways. That is okay. And let's also talk about it. And you know what? If you're in your late 20s or early 30s and this happens to you, it doesn't mean that you're not going to meet the next person. It doesn't mean that you are damaged goods or anything like that. It's actually a blessing that, you know what? I had a 14-year relationship, which I was really, really proud of. And it's okay that came to an end. And we got to go our separate ways and meet other amazing people on that journey too. But sharing that, I did an article for Forbes on it recently as well, and talking about it on podcasts. And I also had an interview with a lawyer on, because one of the things that really I didn't understand, which was something that I wanted women business owners to really understand, was the contract of marriage. Because I had gone through my entire business career reading contracts. My dad taught me you never sign a contract without reading it and understanding it. And so I've always done all the legal stuff for Boss Babe, and just really made sure that, you know, the I's were dotted and the T's were crossed. But as I was going through this divorce, I realized that I had never read a marriage contract. I did not understand the contract of marriage. And that was really painful as a businesswoman, to start having everything that you had built under threat. Because that was the thing. We'd always had very separate lives. Like, he'd always had his money. I'd always had my money. He had a lot of money way younger and longer than I did, that I never touched and was never entitled to. But then all of a sudden, when we're going through this divorce, he was like, oh, well, now everything's ours. And I was like, what? And so when you have a business and a business is doing well, there's valuations that get put on this business and all of these things. And so I invited this attorney to come on to our podcast to talk around like the contracts of marriage, because I got brought up too being like, okay, well, you don't get a prenup because you're not intending to get a divorce. If you got a prenup, you are intending to get a divorce, so that's a bad thing. And I also got brought up with prenups were for the rich and famous. But what I really understood as I was going through this was actually prenups are a safety net. They're a landing, so that if a relationship does go south, you both know what the landing ground is. It's pre-agreed, and you know exactly how things are being divided and being split. And so that was the other reason I wanted to speak more to my divorce, was to educate other women who might have like a lifestyle business, which is Boss Babe is to me, like it's my salary. This is not what I earn on. And that being under threat, where he could potentially get half of my half, or I would have to buy him out of something he never once contributed to, was the most painful thing for me. And I just wanted other women to know, like, hey, if you're building a business which is actually really based on your personal brand, is really based on X, Y, and Z, make sure that's protected, because we had to spend a lot of time and money and energy actually breaking down and dissolving our marriage versus putting that energy into careers and creation, which is where I personally love to put all my energy in. So that was also another big reason why I chose to share and talk about my divorce, because I didn't want other women to go into these agreements and contracts when they weren't perhaps always understanding what they were signing up for. It's a very unromantic side to marriage, but it needs to be talked about. These conversations are not the sexy ones. These are the conversations that no one really wants to have, but actually when you do have and you do listen to, you're like, wow, I actually am like, I've learned something from that.
Right. And it's incredibly important. You know, it's one of those things. It's like sometimes the conversations that you don't want to have are the ones that are the most important to have.
Yeah, for sure.
So now thinking about that phrase, build the life you love, how are you building the life you love today?
I am building the life I love today via a heart-centered approach, I would say. Like, for me, I used to be the yes girl. Like, I would say yes to things when they weren't really in my heart and I didn't really want to do them. Whereas I realized that when I said yes to something over here, I was saying no to something else. And it was I was always saying an indirect no, even if I wasn't saying a no at the time. And I think the biggest learning curve for me in building a life that I truly love is like listening to my heart, my intuition. Like, is this a hell yes? Otherwise it's no for me. And just really starting to be like, you know what? So many opportunities come. There are so many, there's so much abundance. There's so much time. Like, you know, I'm not allowing myself not to live on these constraints that I would previously make decisions out of, and just being like, you know what, another thing will come up or another opportunity will come up, and really allowing myself to flow into that has been really, really important. And so now, like I said, I build a life that I'm like, yes, I want to do that. That's absolutely helping me with further my purpose, my career. And for me, it's also very clear that my purpose is to help more women build wealth. That's exactly what I want to be doing. And every single business that I start, invest in, or any of that, that is what that is doing. And so that's also really important for me to hold that in my thought process and when I'm analyzing a yes or no for something.
Mm-hmm. I heard you say in an interview from a couple years ago that your greatest fear was time going too quickly. Do you still feel that way? And why is that a fear for you? And how does that affect how you live every day?
Wow, that's funny you reflecting that to me. That was a huge fear of mine, absolutely huge. And I think that I thought that when I was in my 20s, I had to have everything figured out by the time I hit 30. You know, by the time I'm like, my mum had me when she was 29. So for me, there was a big thing around like, oh my goodness, when am I going to have children? Like all of these aspects. And I think as women, sometimes we also think about time a little bit differently. And we're, you know, even from young ages, like we're being spoken to about our biological clocks and all of these things. And so I had to do a lot of healing on that. And now I actually do see it completely differently. You know, there's so much time, like 50, 60, 70, 80, 90. They're so young. And I think when you rephrase that, I'm not even halfway through my life yet. And already, like, what have I achieved from being a baby and being able to learn to walk and going to school? And if I think about, I'm not even halfway through my life yet.
Yeah.
Life is so long. And so I think that that's like the rewiring that you have. And I'm sure if you ask someone too, if they were older than me, I feel like as you age and you go through different experiences, time always shifts for you in that moment. And if you ask me for a few years down the line, I would probably answer completely differently. But right now, I feel like there is an abundance of time, and I'm also definitely consciously like reworking what time is to me in my brain, particularly as I'm 34 now, and you know, lots of my friends are having babies and all of these things, and like even that's just a conversation. So yeah, there's a lot, but I think time for me is, you know, really leaning that there's so much of it.
Well, I can absolutely relate. And I think there's so many people listening to this who can relate too. And I really appreciate you being so open and sharing your story with us and in general through Boss Babe. So thank you so much. I want to get into our lightning round of fun questions. So the first one is, what's a ritual that you keep in your home?
Ooh, oh my God, I have so many rituals.
I love a ritual. I'm glad I asked you this question.
Even if it's just for my morning routine, like
Yeah.
I'm obsessed with my morning routine. So I'll like always have my phone on airplane mode. I never touch that. I try and read first thing in the morning and meditate. So I'll normally meditate before getting out of bed. And then I always do that. And then I'll always have a lemon water and then a coffee later on. That's another part of my routine and ritual that I always create. I also have like a weird one. Like I have to, as you know, this is a podcast about home.
Yeah.
I have certain rituals that I always do before bed. Like, you know, even if it's practical, like my dishwasher always has to be on before bed, and everything has to be tidy before I go to bed, like my blankets rolled up and these types of things. So I have a lot of habits and rituals that I do on it, because then I don't have to think about them. And then I'm also starting my day in the same manner, which I think is also really important for me. Everything's neat and tidy, because that my external environment for me does very much reflect my internal environment.
Nice. What's the first thing you do when you get home?
Well, it's different because like when I was working, I used to have when we had offices, I was different. Like the first thing I would do when I got home was get changed, like put my joggers on and like decompress that way. But I work at home now. So I'm like, when I come home, that's kind of different. Like I've normally been to the gym or like been to like Whole Foods and done some shopping or something. But I would always say like whenever I do come in, I'm always straight to the kitchen. There's always like something that I'm like doing in the kitchen. Like that is where I always gravitate to. And if ever I'm stressed or whatever, I'm like, I'll find something to tidy in the kitchen.
What's your comfort food?
I think it's gonna be cake.
It's the best.
Cake for sure. I'm such a cake person.
I also love that a second ago you said find something to tidy in the kitchen instead of find something to eat in the kitchen. I feel like that says a lot about your personality too.
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm a Virgo. I'm like, wait, there's a surface that needs to be
Something
wiped
is
down.
out
Let
of
me
place.
do that.
Amazing. What's your favorite household chore?
Wiping down my kitchen surfaces.
It is calming.
They're always sparkling. I don't know what if I want to do anything in the kitchen, I'm always like wiping down surfaces. I don't know why it's so satisfying to me. But
What's one that you would skip forever?
I hate making my bed, but I won't never not make my bed. Like I can't get in to an unmade bed. I'm the type of person that has to make it before they get in it. Because like
I
I have to do that. I'm also the type of person that writes something on their to-do list when they've already done it, just so they can tick it off. So take what you want from that. But
That
hate
is a
making
really
my
good
bed,
one.
particularly when I have to like put all the cushions on and stuff. But like, why did I buy these cushions? Ugh. But they do look really good.
I get it. What's one thing in your home that makes your life easier?
Ooh. I actually, you know what I love in my home? Maybe it's because I'm staring at it right now, but does make my life easier, is my AquaTrue. So I don't drink California water out the faucet, and I hated buying bottled water. So I got an AquaTrue, which is like a reverse osmosis machine for your water. And then it's just like bottled water all the time.
Nice. Would you consider yourself a homebody?
Yes. Yeah, I love travel, but I love coming home. And particularly now I live in LA, I don't even ever want to leave. I'm like, why do I leave? I live on a permanent vacation.
I totally get that. I feel the same about New York. It's a different vibe, but it is the same kind of thing. Like everything's happening here.
Exactly.
A couple last send-off questions. What does holistic success look like to you today?
I always say you're only going to be as successful as you are mentally and physically capable of being. And I think for me, that's holistic success, is just making sure that you are physically feeling good and you are mentally feeling good. Because without either of those things, what even is success?
Mm-hmm. And what inspires you to live better?
That is a good question. What inspires me to live better? I would say what inspires me to live better is probably like thinking of time in the future. Like I always want to be like feeling good when I'm in my 60s, 70s, and 80s. Like that's what inspires me.
Amazing. Well, Danielle, thank you so much. This was an amazing conversation. Thank you for being so open and for welcoming us into your home.
No, I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much for having me. I love these questions. That's a good. You're making me think about them even more now. I'm like,
Oh, good. Anything else that we didn't cover about your home that you wanted to share?
Only other thing I would share is we recently did a feng shui mapping, and that was a game changer. And I would encourage anyone to look at the feng shui of their home, because I definitely think there's something to be said for that, for sure.
Why was it a game changer?
Just really understanding the spaces and the energy of spaces and how to harness them. So like if there's a travel section and like what you can put in there that really brings that out, and a wealth section and all of these things. So I think it's just like a really powerful way to understand your home and be intentional about the spaces that you create and give them themes too. I've really enjoyed doing that.
Thank you to Danielle Canty for welcoming us today. Follow along with Danielle on the Boss Babe podcast and at Danielle Canty on Instagram. I'm Kristen Twyford, and if you enjoyed our conversation today, I hope you'll leave us a review and tell us why. Give us a rating, and be sure to subscribe to hear more Season 1 guests on Make Yourself at Home. Make Yourself at Home is presented by Nines, household management software that helps you manage your properties and everything that comes with them, so you can make the most of your time at home. Learn more at ninesliving.com.